As the sun peeked through the curtains, little Tommy stirred in his bed. He rubbed his eyes and yawned, ready to start another day of adventure. But something felt off. He looked down at the floor, expecting to see his faithful shadow companion, but it wasn't there. Tommy blinked in confusion, thinking maybe his eyes were playing tricks on him. He jumped out of bed and ran to the window, hoping to catch his shadow in the bright morning light. But no matter how he moved or twisted, his shadow was nowhere to be seen. Tommy's heart raced as he realized his shadow was truly missing. Panic set in as Tommy dashed around his room, searching every nook and cranny for his lost shadow. He looked under the bed, in the closet, and even inside his toy box, but it was gone without a trace. The more he searched, the more worried he became. Tommy decided to ask his parents for help. He rushed downstairs, his bare feet pattering against the wooden floor. "Mum, Dad," he called out, his voice trembling with urgency. His parents looked up from their breakfast, concern etched on their faces. "Where's?" Mother asked, setting down her coffee mug. "My shadow's gone," Tommy exclaimed, tears welling up in his eyes. "I can't find it anywhere." His parents exchanged puzzled glances. They stood up and walked around Tommy, examining the floor where his shadow should have been. To their amazement, Tommy was right. His shadow was indeed missing. "That's strange," his father muttered, scratching his head. "I've never heard of a missing shadow before." Tommy's mother knelt beside him, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. "Don't worry, honey, we'll help you find it." The family spent the next hours searching the house, but Tommy's shadow was nowhere to be found. They even went outside, hoping the bright sunlight would reveal the elusive shadow, but to no avail. Tommy's shadow had vanished into thin air. As they stood in the front yard, bewildered by the mysterious disappearance, Tommy's best friend, Sarah, came skipping down the sidewalk. Her own shadow danced behind her, perfectly normal and intact. "Hi, Tommy," Sarah called out cheerfully, but her smile faded when she saw the worried expressions on their faces. "What's wrong?" Tommy sniffled and explained the situation to Sarah. Her eyes widened in disbelief as she circled around Tommy, confirming the absence of his shadow. "Wow, that's so weird," Sarah exclaimed. "But don't worry, Tommy, I'll help you find it." With Sarah's enthusiasm lifting his spirits, Tommy felt a glimmer of hope. The two friends set off on a shadow hunting adventure, determined to solve the mystery. They started by retracing Tommy's steps from the day before. They visited the park where they had played, checked the ice cream shop where they had enjoyed a treat, and even peeked into the library where Tommy had returned some books, too. At each location, they asked people if they had seen a stray shadow wandering around. Most folks looked at them with confusion or amusement, but a kind old lady at the park bench offered a suggestion. "Have you tried looking in dark places?" she asked, her eyes twinkling. "Shadows love the darkness, you know." Excited by this new lead, Tommy and Sarah began exploring every shady spot they could find. It peered into alleyways, crawled under bushes, and even ventured into the spooky basement of Tommy's house. As they searched, they encountered other children who were fascinated by Tommy's predicament. Word spread quickly, and soon a small army of kids joined the shadow hunt. They formed search parties, combing through the neighborhood with flashlights and magnifying glasses. The day wore on, and despite their best efforts, Tommy's shadow remained elusive. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the town, Tommy felt a deep sadness settle in his heart. Would he ever see his shadow again? Just as they were about to give up, Sarah had an idea. "Tommy," she said, her eyes bright with excitement, "what if your shadow isn't lost, but hiding?" Tommy looked at her, puzzled. "Hiding, But why would it do that?" Sarah shrugged. "Maybe it wanted an adventure of its own. Or maybe it's playing a game with you." The thought had never occurred to Tommy before. Could his shadow really have a mind of its own? The idea was both thrilling and a little scary. With renewed energy, Tommy and Sarah decided to try a new approach. Instead of searching, they began to call out to the shadow, coaxing it to come out of hiding. "Here, shadow, shadow," Tommy called, feeling a bit silly but hopeful nonetheless. "It's time to come home now." As they walked down the street, calling out to the missing shadow, something extraordinary happened. A faint dark shape began to form on the ground beside Tommy. At first, it was barely noticeable, but with each step, it grew stronger and more defined. Tommy's eyes widened in disbelief. "Look," he shouted, pointing at the ground. "It's coming back." Sarah squealed with delight as they watched Tommy's shadow slowly materialize, stretching and yawning as if waking from a long nap. Within moments, it was back to its usual self, mirroring Tommy's every move. Overjoyed, Tommy danced and jumped, watching his shadow follow suit. He hugged Sarah tightly, grateful for her help and friendship throughout this strange ordeal. As they walked home, Tommy couldn't help but wonder about the mystery of his disappearing shadow. Where had it gone? What adventures had it experienced while it was away? He may never know the answers, but one thing was certain: he would never take his shadow for granted again. That night, as Tommy lay in bed, he smiled at his shadow on the wall. "Good night," he whispered. "Please don't wander off again." And just before he drifted off to sleep, he could have sworn he saw his shadow give a tiny wave in response. From that day forward, Tommy had a new appreciation for the constant companion that followed him everywhere. He often found himself telling the tale of his missing shadow to anyone who would listen, reminding them to cherish even the smallest, most overlooked parts of themselves. And so, the legend of Tommy and his adventurous shadow lived on. A reminder that sometimes the most extraordinary stories can come from the most ordinary things, even a simple shadow.